Today I'm going to show you how to weave in yarn ends. When you work crochet patterns that have color work in them, which is I have a ton of blanket patterns that use this method, this is always the dreaded part of my project is weaving in the yarn ends, and I get a lot of questions about the proper way to do it. So I'm going to go over that with you today. So this technique can be used for any crochet stitches, whether it's crochet color work, whether it's a blanket, a pillow, a hat, whatever you're making, this technique can work. So basically, I do not knot my ends when I cut the ends for a color change. So at the end of this project, I have my stitches here, and I'm just going to do one last pull through to end that, and then just kind of secure it by pulling that tight. I'm not going to knot it because I don't like the way knots feel within your crochet piece. So even like these ends, they're just the end of the last stitch that was made in that color. No knots have been tied at all. And these are the beginning strands. Again, no knots have been tied at all. So, and this one right here, as you can see, it's a little bit loose because it was at the end of a row. I'll secure that a little bit snugger before I weave in the yarn ends. So again, this technique can be used on any stitches. I'll be showing you on the stitch I use in most of my blankets. And then just to show you how that it will work on anything, I do have a small swatch here of half double crochets that I will also show you the method in as well. So basically all you need to do this is a pair of scissors and a yarn or darning needle. All that is a larger needle with a larger hole in it, so it makes it easier to thread the yarn into your needle. Okay, so to start, you can start with any pieces of yarn that you want. I kind of tend to start in the middle of my project and work my way out, or from the bottom up. If I'm working on a very large project, I'll work about 5 to 10 rows, really depending on how big the project is and how many color changes there are. And after those 5 to 10 rows, I'll put my hook down, stop crocheting, and weave in the yarn ends and then continue on. I just prefer not to wait until the end of the project. Otherwise, it can be a very daunting task. So I'm gonna start right here in the middle with this little brown piece of yarn here and my darning needle. And basically, you can thread the needle however you like. I find the most success is if I just kind of pinch the end of the yarn with my fingernails and then take my needle and kind of wiggle it back and forth, grab that yarn, and it's threaded. So this one's cut a little bit short. I typically like to leave a little bit of a longer tail on that piece of yarn, but this one is now ready to weave in. So now that my needle has been threaded, I'm just going to kind of hold that in place so that it doesn't fall off, especially where it's a short piece of yarn left. Now, as you can tell, this one ended with this first stitch here, but I did pull the yarn up to the top of it, and I'm going to weave it through these 3 stitches here. To do that, you're just going to take the needle and go straight through the center of those stitches. I'm going to pop it up before I get to that green stitch. So as you can see, my needle comes in here through the center, and then I'm going to, I like to kind of pinch the stitches just because it's I don't know, it's just how I've always done it. And then I kind of pull it so it's the same tension as the yarn, as the crochet piece. You don't want to pull it too tight and you don't want to leave it too loose. Now we worked through these 2 stitches here. I rotate my work, and now I'm going to take my needle and working through a different stretch. So I went through the center of the stitch here. I'm going to go through kind of through the top of the stitches on this side and go through 1, 2, 3 stitches. Okay, so as you can see, my needle's now going through the top of those stitches. Same thing, I'm going to kind of pull that through. And now I'm just going to bring my needle, and this is going to be really tricky because that yarn end is super small or short, and I'm going to bring it through about 2 more stitches, going through the bottom of the stitches. So the main key here is to weave it through different fibers of the rows of stitches. Okay, so now that I've got that kind of pulled tight, I just take my scissors and I'm going to snip it close to the project there, And as you can see, that is now woven in, and you cannot see it at all within those stitches. I'm gonna do a couple more to show you. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the next piece of brown. That way I'll have all the brown ends cut off. Again, to thread the needle, I just take that brown yarn, kind of pull it to the tip of my fingers, and thread the needle and pull it through. This one's gonna be easier because I left a good chunk of yarn. That is recommended. Okay, so I have a lot of stitches to work through here, but really I only need to work through 2 or 3 stitches. So I prefer, again, I work through about 3 stitches going one direction, and then I go back through those same 2 or 3 stitches, but make sure to go through at a different spot or through different fibers of the stitch. So this stitch ended right here. So I'm going to put my needle kind of through the middle of those fibers of that strand. If I go straight through, it's not gonna hold, it's gonna just come out. So I'm gonna go straight through about 3 stitches. There's 1, 2, 3. Pull that yarn through. And now I'm gonna come back through. As you can see, it came out right here. So I'm just gonna kind of move up just a little bit and go through about 3 more stitches, go in the opposite direction. Now I'm gonna rotate back to the other direction and go back through. Again, those ones came through right about here. So now I'm gonna come back down through here and go through about 2 stitches. Pull tight, not too tight though, just kind of, and then trim with my scissors. And now I'm done with all of my brown yarn ends. Okay, for the final one here, this was at the end of the row. So you wanna make sure that, see, this can be loose here. It's that last stitch. Make sure all that is pulled to the same tightness or tension as the rest of the crochet piece. And again, this one actually only has 1 stitch as well. You can either weave through this 1 stitch, or you can come down to this row down here and work through the 2 stitches. I prefer to work through 2. I just feel like it gives you a little bit more to secure off of. So we're just gonna come down here, and you can't even tell that I've skipped this row right here. And then we're gonna go through it again. Again, you're just working through the center of these stitches. Each time you make a pass, you're going through a little bit of a different section of that stitch, and all you're doing is kind of securing those fibers of the yarn together. And you only need to go through 2 to 3 stitches to do that, and then make 2 to 3 passes. Okay, so that is my crochet piece. I have no more loose ends, and it is nice and clean. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, if you're wanting to know how to do it on just a traditional stitch, this is just a swatch of half double crochets I have. I've finished my last half double crochet. I'm just gonna, as I mentioned before, just pull that last bit of yarn through and then just kind of pull that tight. Again, it's not really a knot, but you don't want to put a knot in there because you just don't want to have an ugly end to it. Okay, so to weave in the yarn ends, I'm just going to take my needle and go through the center of the bottom of about 3, maybe 4 stitches. Did about 3.5 there, actually 4. And you're just going to kind of pull that out or pull that through. Okay, and then we're going to kind of come up, maybe grab above the top of this stitch, and then we're going to come back. I'm just going to come through 2 stitches on that direction. And as you can see, you cannot see it still. And then on the last pass, I'm going to come back down through, and I'm going to push it through. I'm going to go back through another 3.5 stitches here. Kind of pull those so it's a nice tension, and then trim up. Okay, so as you can see on this one, you cannot see those yarn ends at all in there. Is what I did is I went through about 4 stitches, I went back 2, and then I came back through about 4. Okay, and you can't see it on the front side or on the back side there. And that is how you weave in yarn ends for a nice, clean, and polished look. I hope you found this tutorial helpful.